This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ+ women? You know what they say. Life is better in flip-flops. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ+ woman, you want to be able to go on vacation, put your feet up, and be your unique self. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations, so you can kiss who you want to kiss without a care in the world. You've never felt relaxation like this. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com or through the link in our show notes and save $100 on your next Olivia booking when you use promo code CRUISING. Welcome back to Cruising. My name is Sarah Gabrielli, and I feel like our guest this week is simultaneously the most niche and most widely known guest we've ever had, all depending on your relationship to the Wicked movie and internet culture. I'm talking about Tracy E. Gilchrist, who reached meme notoriety last year when she interviewed the stars of the Wicked movie, which we'll get to. But she's also been covering queer entertainment news for the past few decades now. Tracy is currently the VP of editorial for Equal Pride, the media company that owns The Advocate and Out magazine. She was also the first ever feminism editor for The Advocate before becoming their editor-in-chief. And in the first half of this episode, we talk all about her career in queer media and how it all started for her. First crushes, first girlfriends, shenanigans at her all-girls sleepaway camp, all that fun stuff. But in a way, Tracy made queer history herself last year when she interviewed Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande on the Wicked press tour. Not political history in the way that we often talk about on Cruising, but she found herself at the center of an extremely queer, extremely viral pop culture moment. If you didn't already know, the press tour leading up to the Wicked movie was all over the internet, mostly because the stars, Cynthia and Ariana, have been deeply emotional and generally fascinating to watch throughout this whole thing. And by far, the biggest moment for this press tour came out of Tracy's interview for The Advocate. We're going to break it all down in the second half of the episode, but there's just a lot of sincere silliness coming from all 3 of the women. I'm going to clip some of it for you to listen to now, but I'll also link the full video in our show notes for anyone that wants the full experience and context and doesn't already have it. For example, just by listening to this clip, you would have no idea that Ariana is lovingly holding Cynthia's finger the entire time. Just something to consider.
This week, people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that and feeling power in that.
I didn't know that that was happening.
I've seen it, yeah.
That's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't know that was happening.
I've seen it on a couple posts. I don't know how widespread, but, I am in queer media, so...
Yeah.
But first, let's hold space for the woman behind the meme, Tracy E. Gilchrist.
I lived in this place that we called it Melrose Place because it was like a lot of friends living in the same building, mostly queer people, in 1999 in Hartford, Connecticut.
A dream come true, first of all.
Yes.
All in the same building, but like not the same apartments, like all different.
No, just the same building, but also
So
like
fun.
it was a lot. I would come home from like a long day at work I was waiting tables then or managing. And I'd come home from like a double, and my friend Lori, who lived upstairs, would be on the front stoop playing guitar, having a stoop party, which was right below my window. And I was like, oh, well, I either join her or I just sit there and be angry in my apartment.
You can't go to bed at that point.
No, not at all. So I lived in this building, and my friend Lauren was running late to work one morning, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to be the editor in chief of Metroline. You want to write some movie reviews?" And Metroline was the gay, we called it a gay rag. It was like, it was like a magazine, but it was made out of paper that you'd pick up in the gay bars back in the day, or like the LGBT center or wherever, or progressive stores around Hartford. And, I'm a movie buff. And so I said, okay. I hadn't written anything other than, like a sad journal entry in a very long time. So I wrote a review of the film Better Than Chocolate, if you remember that Canadian sapphic movie, came out in, I believe, 1999. And then just started writing for Metroline regularly. I didn't get paid. I did it for the opportunity to talk to sometimes celebrities. Early on, I interviewed Jamie Babbitt, who directed But I'm a Cheerleader. And then I started talking to people like the Indigo Girls. And by the time the L Word rolled around, I had Rachel Shelley. I had one of the earliest interviews with Rachel Shelley, who played Helena on the L Word, the English woman. And then I did Sarah Shahi. And so I was really starting to get some big names.
But you're not getting paid this whole time.
No.
That's
for
great.
the very, very end, I was getting like theater tickets and concert tickets. And then when I got the Rachel Shelley interview, I did it for Metroline, but then I repitched it with different quotes and different sections to Curve magazine, which was the lesbian magazine. So I wrote for Curve for quite some time, and I finished college as a non-traditional age student. I went back full-time to Mount Holyoke.
What was your degree in?
Oh, English and critical film theory. So, super useful. But
Well, actually, so useful for you. You used it.
using it. But so then I got a full-time job working for the Journal Inquirer in Connecticut, which is the second largest daily newspaper in Connecticut. I was covering the town of Somers and the Enfield Board of Education, and I thought that I was going to die.
Of boredom.
I would be sitting in a meeting for the town of Somers selectmen. They spoke for, I'd say like a solid 30 minutes about whether or not they had it in the budget to buy a new postage machine for the first selectman's office. And that was the point where I was like, I gotta go. I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah, I've covered news like that. It's really hard emotionally.
The people who are reporters and who do that, I give them credit. It's just not I don't have the focus or the, drive to do that. I eventually packed up my cats and drove cross country and landed in LA. And I eventually got a job to become the editor-in-chief of SheWired.com, which was our company's site geared towards sapphics. And then I became the feminism editor of The Advocate, the first feminism editor of The Advocate. Yeah.
What does that mean?
I was covering primarily women's issues or, women and non-binary folks and things like, during Me Too, it was a dark time. I wrote about sexual assault and rape every day for 3 months and covered things like, I don't know if you remember Casey Affleck, who had been accused of sexual assault.
Yes.
Had won the Oscar. And Brie Larson, who actually had to hand it to him, refused to applaud and just kind of stood there. So I wrote stories about that. I wrote stories about Title IX. And it was not my favorite stuff to cover, but I'm glad I did it. It stretched me in a way. And I just mean that it got very dark for a while, which is why it was not my favorite stuff to cover.
Yeah, of course. So it's really about art and entertainment for you. That's your bread and butter.
Well, I was an actor in my early 20s. So.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you what you were trying to do while you were waitressing and then got this job. That it was acting.
Yeah, I acted my first round of college was at Central Connecticut State University. I had acted in high school. I acted in a regional theater. Then I had a friend who moved to New York He became friends with the stage manager of the show called O Calcutta, which was on Broadway for 25 years because there was full nudity in like a bunch of the scenes. But the show was terrible. It was awful. But it was on Broadway for so long because there was
Because of the nudity, people it
yeah,
was, like,
yeah, that's why it
so,
lasted.
like, exciting to novel because of that.
Yes. I mean, people would pay to go to Broadway and see nude people on stage.
Okay.
So there was a touring company of it. My friend who'd moved to New York became friends with the stage manager of that show, who was then getting that show off. I don't know that I mean to say it that way, but getting it off the ground. So I auditioned for that show. I was cast as like an understudy, but I was in the ensemble. So I was traveling with that theater company on and off for a couple of years. We traveled the US back and forth and across Canada a few times on a rock and roll bus. We would pull up to like a
Whoa.
truck stop and people would say, "Oh my God, whose bus is this?" So we would, we'd say Madonna or Cher, who were big at the time. So I did that for quite a while. And I had an apartment in the city. I was going to move to Astoria and I had my equity eligibility card after doing that show. I was also going through this slightly hippy dippy into the wild phase where I just wanted to ride my bike across country and hike and, backpack and that sort of thing. Also, I say that's part of it, but I was also chicken. I was afraid of auditioning and really putting myself out there, and I didn't do it. And so for a long time, I worked in restaurants and
Do you regret that? Do you regret not pursuing acting, though?
I do a little. I think it all kind of fits. I mean, I keep saying I don't know why I said I was in queer media in that interview. I could have said, "Well, I'm queer," or "I have a lot of queer friends," or whatever. I don't know why I said it that way, but
Yeah.
I think part of it is because I get to ask the questions that I'm interested in, that I think and hope the community is interested in. And I've been doing that since the beginning. I don't have an editor
Mhm.
telling me that I have to ask about, well, what are you wearing? Although fashion, that's not to put down fashion or whatever, but
But the lens is queer stories,
yeah.
like, that's your audience, that's what you're, like,
Mhm.
prepping for,
And I get
totally.
to amplify artists whose work I admire for the most part.
So where did your interest in pop culture
Oh
start and,
God.
like, film?
I can't even remember. I was so little. My mother, so this is aging myself. My mother used to call me the walking TV guide.
I'm very aware of the TV Guide, that's not I grew up with the TV Guide, so don't worry about
By
it.
age 7, I mean, and listen, there were fewer channels, right? It was just like a few channels, but I could pretty much tell you what was on what channel, what day, what time as a 7-year-old. So I loved TV. I had a real love early on for Laverne and Shirley, which was set in the 50s. And these two women were best friends, but they were also roommates who shared a bedroom because they had a small apartment. So they shared a bedroom. And in my mind, I mean, there was something in that just
You latched
pinged
on
for
to.
me. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was, like, the representation that you were able to, like, scrounge up in that
Yes.
time.
Yeah. We're talking the 1970s. So I was very much into TV. It's weird, like, this thing happened to me with a Wizard of Oz adjacent property, and I don't
Mhm.
remember when the Wizard of Oz entered my consciousness. I mean, it's just been in my life forever. I've been obsessed with it.
That's extremely gay of you.
I know. I know.
For me, like, my earliest memories of thinking, like, "Oh, I like girls," is being obsessed with characters and
Mhm. Yes.
actors in this, like, devastating way. Is that something that what
Yes.
was that experience like for you?
Well, one of my very earliest obsessions was an actress called Pamela Sue Martin. She was a redhead who starred in the Nancy Drew mystery
Is the
stories.
redhead part, like, really important to you?
Well, yeah, you know why? Because I don't usually gravitate toward gingers, so she's kind of an outlier.
I randomly do, which is, like,
I
such
mean,
a
I'm randomly becoming more like that, but I'll just sidebar for a second. I went to see the movie Walk the Line with my mom and stepdad at a matinee many moons ago whenever it came out. Reese Witherspoon and Joaquin Phoenix. And at one point, I leaned over to my mother and I said, "Reese looks good with dark hair." And my mother said, "Honey, you like dark-haired girls." And it was like a revelation.
Whoa. Sometimes you need someone else to point that out to you. Yeah.
So I had a thing for Pamela Sue Martin, and I had a thing for this actress, Lindsay Wagner, who starred in a show called The Bionic Woman, where she had like bionic legs and I think a bionic arm and a bionic ear. So she had like
Okay.
ear everything. I don't know what it was. I was obsessed with her. And I just remember watching this show, Good Times, and thinking, and Janet Jackson was on that. And I just was like, she's so cute. She's so pretty. Like, so I have those, those
Yeah.
early memories when I look back. Also, though, the outlier was that there was a show called Welcome Back, Kotter, and John Travolta was on there and he had long, beautiful hair. And he's kind of feminine anyway.
Mhm.
Back when he was so like wiry. And
Yeah.
anyway, I was obsessed with John Travolta.
Johnny Depp had that confusing effect
Yes.
on me as well.
Yeah, Johnny Depp was too
He's
bad
something. Yeah.
yeah, but he was beautiful. Mhm.
So when did you start was it at these young ages that you start realizing, like, what these feelings really are? Or, like, where did that begin for you?
I think it really like, there was a moment, a friend that I would see once in a while, and I decided we would practice kissing on each other, for boys.
Right, for boys.
So I grew up going to a Girl Scout camp in Northwestern Connecticut from the time I was 7 until I worked on and off there at summers until I was almost 30. I was an administrator, like on and off.
Mhm.
And when I was 14, there was this girl who was like rich and a little bitchy.
Okay.
And
Say more.
so we kind of had this little animosity toward each other. And then I don't remember, I should ask her because we reconnected over Facebook. But I don't remember the point where we started to become friendly. And then by the end of my 2 weeks that summer, we were sleeping in the same cot.
At 14, you said?
Yeah, just sleeping and like we would hold hands and hug and everything.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
And then we started like a letter writing campaign to one another.
Not
And
a campaign.
she lived closer to New York and I was in more central Connecticut. And my aunt took us to this amusement park. There was a water slide and like regular rides and games. And this is gonna sound so crazy, but she would bite me all the time.
Okay.
Like, leave marks, and I let her. That for some reason, we just were like that was one way to show affection when we didn't really understand it. Also, this was, like, 1982.
Yeah.
That was early, and then I went camping with her and her parents. They had, like, an RV, and I just remember we would hug for the longest time.
The
Anyway,
tension of all of this. I just wanna say the biting makes sense to me. Like, the
yeah.
most I've ever been in that situation, but it's like you have all this tension of like,
Yeah.
I wanna
And the
just
fact that I let her bite me, it doesn't have a happy ending, though. It has a happy ending because we reconnected, but do
Right.
you want me to tell you how it
Yeah, of course.
So we wrote letters. They were really like, Victorian era love letters, like really incredible. And I used to go up to the payphone. There was a Chinese restaurant up the street, like kind of on a main drag near my house. So I would go up there with rolls of quarters and stand outside on this payphone talking to her. So I went up, I called her. Her mother picks up. "You can no longer see my daughter." And I was like just so confused and upset and hurt. And that was the first time I was called queer. "You're queer." She was going to some fancy boarding school and she needs to concentrate and you're queer and blah blah blah. And so that was right before I started my freshman year of high school. And I've written about this. Like I was going through a breakup for which I didn't have the words. I didn't
Mm.
know what was happening.
Yeah. What were you aware of? Like, were you aware that that you were queer when she said that? Were you
Mm.
like, I need to hide from that because it's true? Or what were you thinking through your sadness?
Then I was just like, why would she say that to me? Why would she
Mm,
say that to me? And you know what? That's not correct. I had been called queer before
mm.
by actually a CIT at camp who I think I must have hugged for too long and called me queer. And I was like, what? And that was when I was younger. I was probably 11 or 12.
And it's literally a slur at this time.
Yeah, it was
Also.
absolutely slur. I always tried to separate it out. Like, even when I became clear that I was attracted to girls or women, even when that became clear to me, I still kind of compartmentalized it like, but I'm not like them. Because it was such a bad thing to be, especially a lesbian, like hairy, Birkenstock wearing, humorless, ultra butch. Nothing wrong with that. But
Mhm.
these were all these things that I just was like, well, that doesn't feel like me. I'm not that. That's not who I am. I love musical theater. So in my head, I couldn't really square it. And even when I did,
I'm not a lesbian. I love musical theater.
but it took me a long time. I had a girlfriend in high school my junior year. She was a senior. I mean, we weren't out to people, but I was absolutely in love with her.
How did you get together?
Yeah, so this is funny. We were we were in a production of Godspell together.
Okay.
But we were in rehearsals and I always she was a senior. I always thought she was so cool. Like just she was very smart. She was also in like the choir and the chorus that I was in. But I always thought she was so smart and just kind of had this like almost like this early 70s like cool girl vibe. Like
Mm,
her hair was like maybe down to here and she would just like effortlessly wear like a white t-shirt or a pair of khaki shorts and
okay.
sandals or something, just effortless. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she always had like a camera on her, just so cool.
I get it.
Yeah, so the week before our performances, this was a very close cast. We had a cast party at someone's house, and I drank too much and went to go to sleep upstairs. And one of the guys in the cast, who I think I'd made out with a couple times before, like it wasn't like unprecedented, but I was clearly not in any shape, and he was like kind of lurking. This was very common. It was
No, yeah, I mean,
very common. Yeah.
it still is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she came in and she actually I remember she, paraphrased one of the lines from Godspell, and she said I'm not gonna say his name, but she said, "No fruit so and so," what his name was. And then, I don't know, after a while, I got up and I went downstairs, and then I ended up sitting on her lap, and she just put her arms around me, and that was like that, right? That was that.
Mhm.
And then we cut to, like, our dress rehearsals a few days later, and I lived about a mile and a half from the high school, she lived around the corner. Anyway, she gave me a ride home. We ended up talking, talking, talking. And this went on for the rest of the week where she just kept giving me rides home and we would talk for hours in the car. The show comes and goes. All I want to do is be with her. Now she's giving me rides home from school.
Okay, and do you know what you're feeling right now? Or like, what are you thinking?
Actually, no, the night, I'm glad I'm having this conversation with you because it's really so the night of the final show, she drove me home. And I remember my mother being like, why did she drive you home? That night when she dropped me off and we talked and talked, like we hugged really fast and then just kind of like brushed each other's lips, but it was like people do,
Mm,
like
mhm, mhm.
European or something.
Right, like some people do.
Yes. I remember lying in my bed obsessing about it. I couldn't get it out of my head. A few days later, she drives me home from school. I cannot contain what is happening inside me. And it was a Volkswagen Rabbit, so it was a stick shift too. But I remember sitting there and just taking forever to say goodbye, and then I'm, like, half out the door, and then I'm like, "Um, I need to tell you something." I don't know how long I hemmed and hawed, and I finally said, "I like you." And she said, "I like you." And I said, "No, you don't understand. I li" and she said, "I know. I like you too." And that was
Oh,
that.
a
Like, we
dream
hugged.
come true, a dream.
And then I went away and was like, "Oh my god, what just happened?" Oh, she was dating a guy at the time all this was
Oh,
happening.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Intense. Kind of hot, like kind of like extra exciting. Like it already had to be a secret anyway.
He graduated, but we were in the band together in the same we both played saxophone. And so I knew him pretty well.
Oh my God.
Anyway, it's a Friday. She comes over. My mom's out somewhere. Then we ended up kissing, and nothing in my life ever felt that way to me. And the next day, I just remember I couldn't think of anything else. The following week, when we were in school, she gave me a note, her senior picture, and a copy of Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, which is also what happens in the movie The Incredibly True Adventures of Two Girls in Love, which is why that movie really resonates with me. I mean, for a lot of reasons, but that's one of them because it was like, oh, that literally happened to me. There was one point too, you know what happened earlier in the year? I forgot about this. Even before the show, it was Valentine's Day, and I gave her a conversation heart that said cool on it. It was a green conversation heart. And it said cool. And she gave it back to me with the note. I forgot about that.
Oh, so she had kept it is what is really the message of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Are there any, as like a pop culture sort of person, like are there moments in pop culture that you remember really affecting you as a queer person? Like I remember where I was when I found out that Angelina Jolie was bi, personally.
Well, that was big for me. I mean, I was pretty into Angelina back in the day.
So many lesbians had an Angelina Jolie moment. Like you've obviously seen Gia, right?
Oh God, yeah.
And it's like, I thought in high school, like I was the only, obviously of my generation, I actually am kind of the only one that's seen Gia, but like every lesbian is like, yeah, that's literally my favorite movie. Like you're not cool for having seen it. But it's like, there's something about her. I know she's like the most beautiful woman in the world, but it's like something about her essence that speaks to and spoke to me before I even knew she was bi. I was like, this is my true love. Anyway. What about you?
Yeah. I love Angelina. I will say though, in that movie, I also love Elizabeth Mitchell.
I had a thing for her in The Santa Claus, but that's like a me thing. This was before I'd even seen Gia. Like I was literally younger, and it was like she's literally the bossy principal that then like softens. And like I literally remember seeing that and being like, why am I feeling things in my body about this principal that everyone hates?
Yes. That's another thing though, like when I first moved here, I'm not gonna lie, in part I moved to LA because of the L word. Even though I'd been out for so long when that came out, it was life-changing.
For you personally?
Yes.
In what way?
I was in queer media. I was writing for this Metro line and in Hartford, and I got the screeners for the first 5 episodes of the L word. And that was 2003. My father had cancer and was in and out of the hospital. It was very aggressive. Was in and out of the hospital from the summer of 2003 until February of 2004. And by the time I got these screeners, it was clear my father was dying. I watched those screeners over and over and over again. It was like something that just held me because as long as I'd been out, I'd never seen a group of friends, this friend group on my TV screen, and they're flawed. The show was flawed, but the characters were flawed. So in some ways they felt real to me, and they became my kind of salve for what I was going through. It was life-changing.
Have you heard of Olivia, the travel company for lesbians and LGBTQ plus women? You know what they say. Life is short and the world is wide. And when you're a lesbian or LGBTQ plus woman, you want to be able to go on an adventure, have some fun, and be your unique self. Olivia Travel creates full takeovers of their cruise, resort, riverboat, and adventure vacations so you can zipline or scuba dive knowing you're with your own community. Discover Olivia for yourself at olivia.com or through the link in our show notes. Save $100 on your next Olivia booking with promo code CRUISING.
There are many ways to entice a potential new customer with flashy branding and calculated marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, the success of a business comes down to the ability to close the sale. And for businesses like Thrive Cosmetics, Allbirds, or Skims, it's what goes on behind the scenes, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple that makes the difference. For them and for millions of businesses, that difference is made with Shopify. Businesses that want to grow, grow with Shopify. Because if your goal is growth, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And Shopify will make sure you're ready. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And with Shop Pay, they boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. It's no wonder Shopify is home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/realm.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
I think you're on mute.
Workday is starting to sound the same.
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Okay, can we talk about your viral moment a little bit more in depth, and then I'll let you go?
Yes.
Okay.
I am leaning in.
I know. I sort of noticed that on your socials, and I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's what you should do, of course.
What else was I going to do? I mean, the train left the station, so I was either going to be at the front or I was going to be left behind. So I got on.
So first of all, were you a big Wicked fan already? Like, were you like excited to be going into this?
I was very excited about Wicked. I will
Mhm.
say this. I'm a huge
Okay.
musical theater nerd. Love The Wizard of Oz.
Mhm.
And I liked it, and I've listened to the soundtrack here and there, but I was not like a Wicked head
Mhm.
going in. But we had chosen Cynthia Erivo to be the Out 100 Icon of the Year. So every year, Out does this grand list of queer people doing amazing things. And last year, we chose Brandi Carlile as the Icon of the Year. This year it was Cynthia. And my friend and colleague, Daniel Reynolds, who is the editor-in-chief of Out, asked me if I would write the cover story.
Mhm.
And so in September, I went to a screening of Wicked, the film. It wasn't even entirely finished. Some of the
Whoa.
CGI wasn't finished. There a lot of it was, but some of it, like some of the flying monkey stuff, was not completed. I loved it. Even unfinished, I was just like, holy shit, this
Yeah.
is incredible movie making. And then I interviewed Cynthia for about an hour over Zoom in September. And I wrote the cover story. The cover story was written. And then I went in to do this little junket so that we'd have, video content, right? Something for video. The Wicked press tour had been going on for quite some time, and there were so many videos of them. That's why everyone was like, "Oh, they're so emotional," or they're crying all the time.
So you're aware that this is the landscape that you're walking into.
Pretty much, yeah.
And
Yes.
I'm not gonna ask you if you were trying to make them cry, because I'm sure that you get that question all the time and you're sick of it. But like,
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sick of it, but I wasn't trying to make them cry. If you watch most of my videos, you'll see that I kind of just try to go into the the
Mhm.
crux of something, and sometimes it's emotional. But the biggest part of it was this was 2 days after the election.
Oh,
Yeah, and
interesting.
I had already interviewed Cynthia for an hour. I had 4 minutes. I had a question for Ariana about the Ozdust ballroom scene, and she gave a beautiful answer. And I wanted to ask Cynthia something I hadn't asked her in our longer interview.
Mhm.
So, I think it was that day, I saw that Toni Morrison from GLAAD had literally posted the lyrics to Defying Gravity on Instagram and talked about how they were hitting different, you know. And of course, I'd seen other posts with people just excited about Wicked or what it means to them, etc. So that's when I went in there and I hadn't asked the question. I was just teeing it up, like giving it context, like this week. And I thought, I mean, they were being interviewed all day long. And I guess my going this week, people are, posting the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that and feeling power in that. And then Cynthia had such an outsized reaction
Mhm.
that I was like, "Oh, shit. It's not like going viral. I've seen it." Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple posts. Like, I wanted to manage her expectations of it because I didn't wanna mislead her. So I
Yeah,
feel like, "Oh
yeah.
god, I just misled her." So I was trying to, like,
You're
reel
like
it in.
you're like, "I have a very specific like, I'm in queer media, that's why I saw it."
Yes! And like I said before, I could have
Yeah.
said, "I'm queer, I have a lot of queer friends, my feed is loaded with queer people," but I said, "Well, I'm in queer media." Like, I
Yeah.
was thrown. I was thrown.
So
She
you're
was
trying to
thrown.
manage her expectations of, like,
Yes.
how big this is. That's so funny and interesting. What was your question that you were gonna get to?
It was I don't remember it verbatim because I haven't repeated it a million times, but it was something like, "This week people are feeling, the defying gravity, holding space with that, feeling power in that." As a queer Black woman in this role, in this major film that is going to reach people who need to hear this message, what does that mean to you? Something
Mhm.
like that. One thing I'll say, when I do these interviews, I still get nervous. I get nervous because it's people I admire most of the time. I get nervous because I wanna do a good job. So I wanna ask them questions that they're not getting a million times that day. I wanna ask questions that are relevant to our community. Look, they're performers, they're actors. They were in a situation for hours and hours and hours and hours talking. They'd been in it for several weeks talking about the film. It's exhausting. I mean, to sit here and just talk to me, that takes an energy to be present
Mhm.
and to try to hear what people are saying and respond in a way. So, I thought they were lovely. I thought they were warm. If they are emotional, why wouldn't they be? I get emotional about my work. I
Mhm.
think we should all be proud of or happy to be delivering something to the world that might bring some joy, especially with a Donald Trump presidency looming. So I just think the people who are criticizing them really harshly are probably
Mm.
misogynists.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get it so much. Yeah, I would be crying all the time if I was
Yeah.
in their position. Like anyone that mentions that they think they're faking the emotion,
Yeah.
I'm go into full debate mode. I'm like, they've literally been like wanting to do this exact thing. They could have never imagined it on this scale and with this response from people. And they're just like every day of their lives being recognized for it over and
Yeah.
over again. Like I would be sobbing.
Yeah.
The people that don't understand don't have passions in that way, actually, because I'm like, well, isn't there something that's like a culmination of all of your life's work that would make you very emotional for it to be celebrated? And they're
Mm.
like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, then that's why
Well,
you
then
don't
you
get
don't
it.
get it. And that's what I was saying about the holding space thing, like, it's funny, it's campy, I know that. This is the definition of camp, as Susan Sontag wrote it, because pure camp is sincere.
Mhm.
I was sincere in my question, Cynthia's reaction was sincere, Ariana trying to comfort her was sincere.
Mhm.
That equals high camp.
100%.
So, I get that it's funny, but
Mhm.
the people who are saying they don't understand what holding space means at this juncture, those people are insincere, and this is not for them, and I don't care. I mean, I've gotten people who someone called me pretentious for using the term holding space. I saw it in a comment. And I'm just like, you know what? I am a little pretentious because when I came out, I had to have that in me. I had to think that I was special in some way. And so I've always kind of cultivated a vocabulary or whatever. And I probably sometimes talk like I'm in a Shakespeare play or whatever. I mean, there was an artifice, there was a crafting of my persona that went on when I was very young as a form of protection that probably reads as pretense, but it was survival. So I thought that was funny.
So, okay, so in the room, like,
Yeah.
first of all, did you clock the finger hold in the room?
Okay, I did, but earlier I clocked it when Ariana was giving her answer, and I think it's in the video. If you go to YouTube and watch the video, the full video, I think you can see my eyes go like I I
So
did a
there was a finger hold before the one that
Oh,
we
yeah,
all
they
know?
were touching fingers the whole time. I was like and I think I said this to someone else. I'm like, "Please, Lord, I am only a human lesbian, please."
This is breaking news. I feel like that there was a second finger hold.
Yeah, it's in the longer video.
Okay, I'll clip it.
Because Ariana's talking about the Ozdust Ballroom, and she's like, "I really wanted to keep the space warm for this one," and she started touching Cynthia's finger, and I went, "You can see my eyes go, 'What?'" Because it's so gay. I mean, that's the other thing. I'm
So
like, "This
gay.
is so lesbian." The fact that
So
now
sapphic.
Yes, I was at the Creating Change conference for the task force a few weeks ago, and a lot of young trans and non-binary folks, a lot of queer folks asking me to hold their fingers.
Like for pictures and stuff? They
Well,
want
yeah, I'm always but I have a rule, like, it depends on what side you wanna be on, 'cause if you're on this side, you have to be the finger holder. If you're on this side, you have to have your finger held.
Right,
So,
right. There's a strict
I'm a
yeah.
stickler.
So did you leave the interview knowing like, "Oh, this is gonna be a big thing?" What
No.
when did
I
you
left and I
realize that it was taking off?
No, I left and I was just like, "Well, they were lovely." I felt very happy.
Them crying is like par for the course at this point. It's like you don't
Yeah.
even have to try. Like, probably you're
Yes.
gonna get some tears.
Well, I have interviewed a lot of people where I had somebody who's on a very popular, queer TV show, queer adjacent, a lot of queer characters, sobbed in a
Whoa.
Zoom interview during the pandemic, and I was like, just, let them
Yeah.
cry because people are talking about their identities. So we had a clip on out.com's Instagram, a reel, and at first it was that part of it, the part that went viral was cut out. And I was
Mm.
like, "That's the wrong clip." And so our social media manager went, "Oh, I agree. Yeah, this clip is better." So she went and posted it. I saw the views climbing. Like we get, maybe tens of thousands of views on certain videos, but it's not like massive,
Mhm,
massive.
mhm.
I saw the views climbing. I knew it was like up to about 500K. I thought that's really good for us. That's great. And I was outside on my porch with a coffee in the sun with my cat
Mhm.
because I go out with her so she can get some air.
Nice.
Publicist friend of mine texted me and said, "Hey, we should get together for a drink. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving this viral moment for you." And I'm like,
You're like, "What?"
so then I say, "Well, yeah, the video is doing well. Yeah, great. Thank you." I didn't think anything of it. And then an hour later, so that guy's name was Ryan. An hour later, another publicist friend of mine named Ryan said, "I'm loving this viral moment for you."
The publicists were on it. They were like, "We need to reach out to Tracy."
And I was like, "Yeah, it's doing really well, but okay." And then we were in a meeting and I mentioned it. I was like, "Yeah, I don't know, something's going on with this video." And someone on the call was like, "Yeah, you're a meme." And I said, "What?" So I was going to lunch with my best friend. Meanwhile, my phone starts blowing up. I've been in this text thread with friends for ages. They sent me Evan Ross cats. And so I'm like, I'm at the stoplight trying to be like, I get there to the place where we're eating and I had to apologize. I said, "Rick, I'm really sorry. I have to really try to figure out what's going on." And I kind of wrapped my head around it a little bit. It was because of Evan Ross cats. And I started showing it to Rick, and he's a little older than I am, and he's not like clueless or anything, but he's like, he's like, "Why is it funny? I don't get it. Why is it funny?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It just is." And like, then there's the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel painting, and, like, I can't even remember all the ones that came out early that I was dying over. Um, so that happened, and
Mhm.
then I had early conversations about merch and what that would look like, and would I give some money to Trevor Project or It Gets Better or
Mhm.
something, but I couldn't get that off the ground because I don't have the infrastructure, which is fine. I had tickets for Cyndi Lauper down here, in South LA, and my friend and I were there in the lounge waiting for the show to start, and I see that the Gay Men's Chorus has tagged me, and I was like, "Oh, they must be singing Defying Gravity,"
Mhm, mhm.
the Gay Men's Chorus of New York.
Yeah.
It was actually a collab request. So I collabed, not really realizing what it was, and that at that point, like, 4 gay guys that I know, I look up and I see them coming toward me, and they're like, "Well, if it isn't the queen of queer media." When I realized it was something when I finally saw that the Gay Men's Chorus actually did lyrics, like a song to Holding Space, and that was when I thought, "Oh, wow." Yeah. And then 2 days later, I was, like, doing interviews with the New York Times, with The Guardian
Yeah.
in the UK, and I became very overwhelmed.
Right, obviously.
Like, in a good way. One of my friend's partners is a manager who was just like, "Hey, we just wanna support you with this and help you kind of navigate some things," and another friend of mine is talent agent. One of the young guys from his agency helped me with the Amazon Echo Show stuff. So, and, the influencer community, or at least the queer influencer community that I've interacted with, has been so kind and generous with
Mm.
offering me advice and platforming me a little bit. And I have a different view of that community of
Mhm.
people. And I guess on some level, I'm one of them now, or becoming one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. What was the journey like of kind of coming to accept this as your reality? And like, I'm sure that there's also so much negativity that has come with it too. Like, I know the trolls on the internet, like,
Yeah.
you can't stop that from like seeping through.
You know what? Honestly, though, it's really weird because I am a sensitive person. And I mean, I'm sensitive in the fact that, like, I care about the work that I do. And so if someone's coming for that, or, criticizing me, I have tended to be sensitive, but I don't care about them. I do not
That's
care.
awesome.
It's not for them.
Yeah.
I do not care what you think. I don't.
And you shouldn't. Like, obviously, you shouldn't.
No, and I've been given so much love. Like, at this conference, a lot of these folks are some of the most affected people by what's happening politically right now. And they found joy in this moment. It brought something to them, and it is for me to stand there and give them what I can. If that's taking a picture and holding a finger, if that's listening to their story around why it was meaningful to them, then that's what I can do. It's been a real gift. I mean, I had somebody at that conference cried, and, to break it up, because they were embarrassed that they were crying, and so I just, I waited, and then I I waited a beat and said, "I'm holding space for you."
I mean, you can always pull that out and people will love it.
Oh, I was at a taping for a show. I was there the other day, and a couple people recognized me in the audience. So some execs wanted to take a picture with me, and then I was walking out, and these, like, PAs, they were like, "Are you the holding space lady?" So I took some pictures there, and yeah.
Did you end up, like, exchanging words with Cynthia when you saw her again about the meme situation? Like, did she say anything to you about it?
I did. So after we did the Out 100, I had a reunion with Cynthia there, which was beautiful. And Patagonia, the drag queen Patagonia, had put together a Wicked themed performance to Defying Gravity and included the clip. So ahead of time, Patty had asked for Cynthia and me to be at the front of the stage. I actually had a little trouble getting through the crowd to get back up there. So Cynthia was there watching the performance. Maybe about a minute in, I came and stood next to her, but she didn't see me
Uh-huh.
because she was watching. She was very focused on the performance. And at one point, Patty pointed to me And Cynthia turned around and said, Tracy. And so we hugged.
Yeah.
And I said, as we were hugging, I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make the story about me. And she said, I f***ing love it. But I was really concerned when it started to happen, the virality. I was loving it, but also felt very strange because I didn't want to eclipse the moment. But she and Ariana are in on it. So
yeah. Also, you're not the one making it about you. Like, none of this is your doing.
Yeah.
I'm glad that she was able to like kind of reassure you, because I'm sure they're not blaming you.
No,
I mean,
she's
first of all,
so
they don't
sweet.
care. Yeah. Also, the clip is very much about everyone. Everyone plays their part, as we all know. Like,
Yes. I just hope I can take it and keep moving with it in my own, my own career, because I've been doing this a very long time and this feels like a moment to move into bigger spaces. But I also want to continue to bring joy and laughter and maybe some authenticity to people.
yeah. Okay, my last question for you is I'm so sorry. But can you define for me, do your best to define for me what you meant by holding space?
Yeah, well, okay. So I probably really wanted to say feeling seen, but that felt so hackneyed and overused to me that I didn't want to say feeling seen. But that's really what I meant, was that the lyrics of Defying Gravity, this song that's been around for decades, that, means one thing in the show. I mean, this is a show about a human who is othered, bullied for being different, and who, at the moment they come into their full power, their full potential, is excised by a fascist leader. I mean, the show is so relevant to where we're living right now. And I really wanted to get to the idea that its meaning can change based on who's performing it. That adds a layer, especially with race. I mean,
of course.
especially. So I think for me, holding space in general just means like really being in the moment with something and kind of feeling its full potential. So I think that's what I meant.
Yeah, it was resonating.
Yes.
I honestly do understand what you meant. And while it's like all funny, I like completely understand what was happening.
Like inherently you get it, right? Like even if you're like, oh, I haven't heard it used that way, but like I think you can intuit, right?
Yeah, like I've literally found myself saying it and not even as a reference. I already would have said it. And then I'm like, haha, not trying to, no reference intended. Like it's not that, I don't know.
It's a therapy phrase, but I didn't learn it from there. It just was somewhere in my brain. I don't know that I've even ever said it before.
Did you have it written down?
I do think I wrote it down in the final version.
Yeah.
I should try to find where that notebook is. I don't know where that notebook is.
You have to find it. That's going to go in a museum. Thank you to our sponsor, Olivia Travel, the travel company for lesbian and LGBTQ+ women. Cruising is produced by a small but mighty team of 3 queer women, Rachel Karp, Jen McGinnity, and me, your host and editor, Sarah Gabrielli. Our theme song is by Joey Freeman. You can follow Tracy at Tracy E. Gilchrist on Instagram and Threads. Follow Cruising on social media at CruisingPod or on the web at www.cruisingpod.com. Support us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod.
Hello, I am Kristen Russo.
And I am Jenny Owen Youngs.
We are the hosts of Buffering the Vampire Slayer once more with spoilers, a rewatch podcast covering all 144 episodes of, you guessed it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
We are here to humbly invite you to join us for our 5th Buffy prom, which, if you can believe it, we are hosting at the actual Sunnydale High School. That's right. On April 4th and 5th, we will be descending upon the campus of Torrance High School, which was the filming location for Buffy's Sunnydale High. To dance the night away to 90s music in the iconic courtyard, to sip on punch right next to the Sunnydale High fountain, and to nerd out together in our prom best inside of the set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
All information and tickets can be found at bufferingcast.com/prom. Come join us.
Contained herein are the heresies of Radolf Buntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I study the secrets of the divine plagues and uncover the blasphemous truth that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Radolf Buntwine, wherever podcasts are available.